language mean the limits of my world. A very cheerful morning to all. Respected President, Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council, Dr. S.P. Singh Ji, former Vice Chancellor, Guru Nanak Dev University, Arvinder Singh Ji, Honorary General Secretary, Principal Dr. Arvinder Singh Ji, my fellow teachers, participants who have joined via Facebook Live on GGN Media as well as in the meeting, I feel honored to welcome you all. Postgraduate Department of English and Department of Communication Skills is organizing an international webinar on language proficiency for immigration. A purposeful communication prevents overreactions, negative feelings, and costly miscommunications. The greatest mistake we humans make in our relationship is we listen half, understand a quarter, think zero, and react double. To help us assist in becoming proficient in English language, we have among us Ma'am Jasleen Corbindra, founder and director, Alliance Learning Academy, British Columbia, Canada. Keeping you waiting now, I would now welcome Madam Jasleen Corbindra. Ma'am has an over 15 years of teaching experience in prestigious institutions across India and Canada. She has played multiple roles, including that of an assistant professor, a soft skill trainer, an ESL trainer, content writer, and has been associated with institutions like Oak Ridge International, Hyderabad, Stella Maris College, Chennai, New Delhi Institute of Management, Delhi, and International Language Academy of Canada in Vancouver. She is the founder and director of Alliance Learning Academy, British Columbia, where she continues to train international students for the two leading English proficiency tests, namely IELTS and CELIP, for the purpose of Canadian PR. Since the onset of COVID 19, she has built her experience in online mode of teaching and training her students in and outside Canada. Recognizing the Canadian immigration aspiration among Indians, Jasleen is diversifying soon in this arena as well to provide expert advice coupled with honest and transparent client interactions. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the introduction. At the onset, I would like to thank Principal Dr. Arvinder Singh Ji, Dr. Sushminder Jeet Kaur, Dr. Hargunjot Kaur, Postgraduate Department of English and Department of Communicative English. I'll go right ahead. So my topic for today is proficiency for immigration. If you can have the slides up, please. Okay, thank you. So let's dive right into the subject of our discussion and try to understand what language proficiency means. Though Dr. Sushminder Jeet has already made my work easier, she's beautifully explained the entire concept, but let me try my best. So according to the theoretical definition, which you can see up on the slide, but in simpler words, I would say proficiency refers to the ability to perform an action or function. So it refers to one's ability to use language for real world purposes, to accomplish real world linguistic tasks across a wide range of topics and settings. So it's not about what you studied. Did you study grammar in grade 5 or grade 1, or how you were taught English? But language proficiency is about the practical use of what you were taught, whenever you were taught, wherever you were taught. So even if you were not, say, taught English during your schooling, that doesn't stop you from becoming proficient in English, because it's all about using the skills wherever you learn and however you learn it. And proficiency is measured in terms of receptive and expressive language skills, say syntax, semantics, and other areas that demonstrate language abilities. And we all know very clearly that there are 4 domains to language proficiency, which I'm going to be repeating very heavily throughout my presentation today, and that's listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. So language proficiency, I would say, in other words, is measured by, for an individual, for each language separately. You might be very versant or very proficient in English, but not proficient in another language. So it's about how much of practicality have you taken from that one set of language, which you cannot transfer to another language. Let's move to the next slide. Moving on, let's talk about specifically English language proficiency. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Right, so proficiency in English is a critical component of a successful modern society. English is the third, as most of us are aware, it's the third most spoken and most widely taught language on the planet as of now. Commonly used in over, I would say, 100 countries by more than 300 million people as their first language. And surprisingly, over 600 million as their second language. Hence, it's doubtlessly clear that English is a global language, the language of the modern era, to put it more clearly. So English skills are necessary for any country, to fully benefit from global commerce, access the latest science, technology, innovations, and exert influence in the world. So like you've seen, why is US that power? It's practically holding the rest of the world together to some extent. Language has a lot to do with that. So there's no contesting the fact that English is the language of international communication. 1 out of 5 people can speak at least. If they cannot, they can at least understand English. So it's particularly important language even online, with more than half of the content on internet written in English. So if one is proficient in English, there are lots of other benefits. Even little things like traveling gets a lot easier. You would not think twice of going to countries where you can feel more confident to move around, shop, talk to the native people because you know their language. So, good knowledge of English will always give you access to other little things like movies and music and literature, not just from 1 or 2 or 10 countries, but hundreds of countries around the globe. And not to mention the fact that literature is a big part, and numerous books from across the world are translated into English. The global language also, kind of facilitates your growth as a person, as you're able to learn the values, habits, and way of life of the cultures that are different from yours. So when you go to a different country, you don't feel out of place because you're able to relate with the people there. So, and I think who's seeking admission in colleges or universities in your own country or abroad, both ways. I would say even in India, it's equally desirable to have students who have very strong command of English language. So English is incredibly important. So since English is spoken in so many different countries, there are thousands of schools and universities around the world that offer programs in English. And if you're proficient, this opens a floodgate for all of you students. If you speak good academic English, I would say there's a lot of opportunities for you to find an appropriate school and course that suits your needs. So you will be the one choosing the right place rather than the colleges or the universities saying that, we don't want this student and we'll just pick this student. You will have that command. And once you have successfully graduated from one of these good colleges or universities, English increases your chance of getting a good job in a multinational company within your home country also. I mean, let's not forget that India is pretty big on English now. Or if you're finding work abroad, then definitely, there's no escape from the language at that point of time. In fact, I would like to share that an Accenture report highlighted concerns from the IT industry in particular, that most of the technical graduates they see who come out to work, they're actually not work ready. And they did not mean that they're not work ready, means that they're not technically equipped or the graduates lack technical skills. That wasn't the case. But they actually lacked the soft skills, out of which I would say the most pertinent, the most important or crucial one is English proficiency. And this life skill gap isn't just confined to India. Gaps in soft skills are holding back businesses and academic research everywhere. Another study that I would like to share is a McKinsey study, which found that 60% of employers worldwide, mind it, not just India, around the world, think that graduates are not suitably skilled for the workplaces that they enter into. Even in the US, Bloomberg, if you've heard about those researchers, they found that one out of three bosses and nearly half of the academic institutions around US and the rest of the world believe that new entrants don't have the language skills needed to perform at a higher level. So they are good for entry level, they are taken by companies, but for the further growth up the corporate ladder, they're just not ready. And like I said before, it's not because of their technical skills. I mean, it's a known fact that specifically Indians have very strong technical skills, which people in the Western country lack. I mean, natives here lack those skills. That's why these countries want immigrants or want people to come on work permits and work here in countries like US and Canada. So technical know-how is not an issue, but the language proficiency is definitely one, which is posing a big challenge and a problem. And I would also say that I see a lot of students who come here. I've been interacting with a lot of them now. They take admission in colleges and universities in Canada, and they struggle in their classes, in spite of the fact that they would have cleared a proficiency test. They would have probably scored a 5 or a 6, like an average score, or maybe a little higher. But still, it's a struggle. They managed to get those scores before they moved here, but they are not able to fit in. It's not about competing with the natives, but to begin with, it's about fitting in with them. You cannot stand apart when you come to a new country. You cannot make a circle. I mean, honestly, I've seen students who come here, and I've been training them for IELTS and CELPIP, the two tests. They came as students, so that means they've already done one of the tests before they came to Canada. And after they came here, they study, they gain experience, and then they want a permanent residence. So they have to appear for the test again. And when they come to me or other teachers, other trainers, we see that our own students from India, from Punjab, they're not confident. In spite of living in Canada for like 2 years or 3 years, they still cannot talk well or proficiently in English. And the whole thing is, the fitting in, because they cannot fit in when they come. Practically, what happens is that our students make a group of their own, and that group consists of one Punjabi group, one South group, and that's how they never even try to fit in with the natives. They never get that chance. So when I asked them, I said, "You've been here for these many years. How come you're not conversant, even as much as people sitting probably in Punjab are better off?" And they say that we don't get the exposure. They work with employers who are Punjabis. They have all friends who are Punjabis. They live in the houses as tenants or paying guests, however, and they're all Punjabis. Because the confidence to move out of your comfort zone and you know get that experience isn't there. So you're not expected to acquire a North American accent, that you start talking like a Canadian. They don't expect it, because They're used to having so many immigrants all through. Now, if you hear me, I do not have a North American or a Canadian accent yet. Maybe down the line when I've lived here for much longer, uh, maybe. But right now, I think my accent is very, very neutral. And this is what you need to have. Just have a neutral accent. Uh, and that never poses a problem. I've never had problems, talking to locals here or natives here. But communication skills should be strong enough that you're capable of understanding the native accent without feeling lost, right? So immigrants have to take that plunge and try to blend into the society as opposed to staying away due to their hesitations. So that's where the slide which says settlement. And I think that this is one of the major issues which our own community is facing today. And a lot of things will become easier if this part is taken care of, not once you come to Canada, but you already start the process when you're here in your home country. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So moving on, let's talk about English language proficiency in Canadian context specifically. So Canada has two official languages, English and French. And newcomers to Canada are required to prove their English or French proficiency by taking a language proficiency test, which is approved by um, the Department of Immigration, which is actually called Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada, mostly referred to it as IRCC. So, it's popularly called as IRCC, and I would be referring it as IRCC in the rest of the slides as well. So this is to ensure that any newcomer, now why do they have this policy of, having this test that everybody needs to give an English test and get a particular score and then move to Canada? So this is to ensure that any newcomer in Canada will be able to, communicate and support themselves through work in at least one of Canada's official languages. So it's basically a forced help that Canadian Immigration Department is giving you, that you have to have at least the eligible English skills before, or French, but in our context, I think we'll just stick to English skills because that's more practical for in the Indian scenario. So English proficiency tests are typically associated with international students, right? So everybody says that if you have to go to Canada, you want to take admission, you have to do an English test. Or I would say nobody says English test, everybody says IELTS, because IELTS kind of a synonym for English test in India specifically. But I would like to tell you that there's a wide variety of reasons that organizations of all types would need an accurate English language proficiency test, like companies, corporates, government offices, as well as educational institutes at all levels would need a very precise determination of English language skills of any group that enters into their organization. And the reason is that they have to compare individuals to one another, and they have to monitor how the language is being acquired, what is the progress, or how they develop the curriculum further. So in Canada, particularly, I would say English proficiency tests are required at various steps of moving to this country, starting from entering Canada as an international student to gaining permanent residence. And then, even for becoming a citizen, one needs to prove English proficiency. Though the levels required are much lesser, but still, you have to prove that you are proficient in English, and you know as much English if you want to become a citizen here after PR, that you can make small conversations, you can talk to your neighbors, you can go to talk to a doctor. So practically, each step, they make sure that you're not forgetting to learn English. Okay, so another time when people are required to take these proficiency tests is when they apply for Canadian designations, local designations here. Many of the professions in Canada are regulated. And that means that one needs to get a license to practice that profession. Like you know, we have on the slide real estate agent or mortgage broker, etc. And to get that license, apart from, of course, studying that course in a proper college and then giving a challenge exam, which either you clear or you don't clear, even after all of that, what is expected is that you fulfill the language requirement by receiving at least an eligible score in the proficiency tests. For example, for a real estate agent, the band that you need would be lesser than what you need for an immigration consultant, because the command of language needed for each profession is different. So where the language proficiency requirement is more, people have to interact with localites, officers of the immigration department, then the requirement is much higher. So you have to be at an advanced level if you are giving an immigration consultant course. For example, even I had to give this course, this proficiency test, when I wanted the license for immigration consultant. And in spite of the fact that I'm a trainer for English for over 15 years, and when I was studying this course, I was actually teaching English in a language college in Canada. But all of that aside, they want you to take a test and make sure that you are proficient in whichever profession you're entering. And it's very discouraging for people. I've had classmates who are from all kinds of countries when we were doing immigration consultant course in a college. And there were people from Afghanistan, Iran, and not many people have strong language skills. And so many times we've seen that people are not able to get their license and work as real estate agent or an immigration consultant because they cannot get the required score in the English proficiency test. And in spite of doing the entire course and passing the exam, they cannot get a license. But you'll be even amazed to know that while applying for the immigration consultant's license, even a Canadian native, that is someone who's born, brought up, and did all their study here, even they have to do these English proficiency tests. So therefore, you should, those who are planning to come to Canada should be prepared that your relation with these English proficiency tests are going to be much longer than you would really like, because you would think that, we'll take admission as a student. Okay, give my test once and then I'm done. I get a 5 or a 6, whatever the college requires, and I'm done. That's not true. When you're going to do your permanent residentship here, you would again require that score. And then you would need a higher score for that. So the practice should start right away. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, now let's see what proficiency tests are. Proficiency tests are very different from achievement tests. What we specifically in India are used to, of course, we don't know the title, but they're all achievement tests. Language proficiency test is an evaluation of how well a person can use the language to communicate in real life. So how it differs from an achievement test is, because an achievement test really measures how much knowledge do you have. It measures the specific information that you were taught grammar. Do you remember the tenses, prepositions, uh, you know, all other aspects? What is a verb? What's an adjective? And what is a proficiency test? Proficiency test expects that whatever you learned, all this grammar that I'm talking about, are you able to apply it in a practical scenario? Right? So, whereas a achievement test is about what a person knows, a proficiency test targets what an individual can do, what he or she knows. I hope this is clear, because uh, we really don't think when we give tests. They are like burden that we have to get it over with. But when you understand that what is the reason of, or what is the basis or theme of a proficiency test, we might be able to deliver better. Okay, let me give you an example. Suppose it's a driving test. So here in Canada, a driving test does not mean that you just go to the license office and you tell them, I want a license, and they give you a license. So you have to study from a booklet, because there's going to be a knowledge test. Now that knowledge test is a set of, I think it's been long I gave it, but I think it's about 20 questions. And those questions are based on how much you know about roads and how much you know about traffic signals, what to do. So those questions that you answer, pretty much, representing paper and pencil questions, that's a written examination. Now that's an achievement test. But after you pass that achievement test for driving, which is, knowledge test, the knowledge that you have, then you go for a practical driving test. Now that is where you actually drive the car, and that's where your proficiency test determines how well you can actually drive. So that's the difference between an achievement test and a proficiency test. Similarly, I would say the language proficiency test is an evaluation of how well a person can use the language which he or she has learned for years, school life, maybe part of college life. You've been learning English, but now it depends on how you use that language to communicate in real life. That is what English proficiency tests are looking for. So these type of language tests focus on four arenas, like I've already talked before: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And they collectively, we generally call them LSRW skills. So when you use a language every day, you will need to use all these four skills. We don't realize it, but we use all listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills every day, whichever language we are communicating in daily. So language proficiency tests are designed to examine how competent you are at doing what you are doing every day, right? So there are different English tests accepted in Canada for international students applying to colleges and universities, and those that are required for Canadian permanent residency. So there are different sets for both. As you can see on the slide, at present, the accepted tests for international students is IELTS Academic, TOEFL, CALE, CET, and Duolingo. And for permanent residency, it's IELTS General Training and CELPIP. Let's look at some of these in a little detail. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so international students applying worldwide to programs taught in English must provide proof of their English proficiency as a part of their applications. This ensures that they have the necessary English skills to understand academic writing, themselves produce those scholarly writings, because you will have to write assignments, essays, whichever industry or stream of study you choose, you will still have to do all of that. And more importantly, you'll have to communicate very effectively with your supervisors, like your teachers and your peers, other classmates, right? So each Canadian Designated Learning Institute sets their own admission policies. So designated learning institutes, when I say, we call them commonly as DLIs. They are colleges, universities, and all the other educational institutes that are allowed by the government to give admission to international students. So if some of you or all of you are looking at coming to Canada for studying further, then please keep in mind that DLI, that is Designated Learning Institute, is a very important aspect which you need to research very well before you take admission. because only if it is approved by the government, that's how it is. Once it's approved by the government, that's when it is called Designated Learning Institute or a DLI. And only students studying in DLI would be able to work here after, right? So there are a lot of intricacies to that. Some DLIs also cannot let the students work later. So you have to be very, very judicious when you are selecting a college or a university in Canada to come here and study. Anyway, going back to DLIs assess criteria such as applicants' transcripts, professional background. They look at all of these things when you apply as a student. Transcripts means they look at your marks, professional background, as in what courses have you studied, what degree have you done before. Motivation letter, that's considered one of the very important aspects in which you actually write uh, your heart out that why do you want to study in a particular college or a university, and why are you interested in a particular course that you program that you are selecting. And apart from that, academic and professional recommendations, maybe from your teacher, from your college, all of that really matters um, for your admission processes. So apart from all of that, they also assess your language skills. So there are a little over, I would say, 1,500 DLIs in Canada. So there's immense opportunity. And each one of them, now the intricacy is that each one of them have their own tailor-made requirements for the admission process. You cannot say that if one college, if say UBC, one of the universities in Vancouver, requires these 5 things for marketing, the Douglas College would probably need all those 5 things. Douglas College might need 7. So you have to specifically research on the course that you're selecting and then look at what their requirements are. And their English proficiency requirements will also change from DLI to DLI. Okay, it's important that you check. I would repeatedly say that you check with the DLIs that you're applying to before deciding which language test to take as well. Because all DLIs do not accept all English tests, which you can see up here on the screen. So here is an overview of 4 most widely accepted English proficiency tests, which you can see on this slide as well. Okay, let's start with IELTS. Yeah, let's just stick to this slide for now. Okay, let's start with IELTS. IELTS academic test is operated by 3 partners, IDP Education, British Council, and Cambridge Assessment English. This test is accepted, I would say, by almost 400 Canadian universities and colleges. So due to the ongoing lockdowns, it might have affected the number of countries that are holding these tests, but usually it is administered in about 140 countries. And the results are out in, say, 13 days when you give a paper-based test, and in about 5 to 7 days when you give a computer-based test. So the top reason of why everybody knows about IELTS and it's popular all over the world, the reason for that is why student fraternity in India also likes it and knows this test is because of his availability, wide acceptance over the world, right? So both factors. One, it is available, multiple test centers, not just test centers. I would say another reason why it is very popular is also because of the coaching centers. Now, if you look at Punjab itself, there are multitudes of coaching centers which give IELTS academic and general training. So that's one reason why it becomes popular in that particular city and country. And secondly, it is very widely accepted, not just Canada, but in other English native speaking countries as well. Okay, let's talk about the next test, which is TOEFL. as you can see, the abbreviation is TOEFL, and it is Test of English as Foreign Language. Pretty much says what it does. So TOEFL is usually available in over 150 countries. This used to be much more famous, say 15 years from today, but IELTS Academic, I would say, has taken over, specifically in India, definitely has. And like I said, even the availability right now because of the pandemic might have been affected, but this test is available in about 150 countries otherwise. And new test dates are expected to become more available in more locations around the world. So this test is accepted by more than 11,000 universities and other institutions in over 150 countries. TOEFL is one of the two major English tests in the world, and the other one, like we just discussed, being IELTS. So TOEFL can be completed. One of the reasons why it is famous is because it's a much shorter test. It can be completed in one sitting, just in about 1.5 hours, as compared to an IELTS academic, which is almost a 3 hour long test. Okay, let's talk about the next one. And it's a fairly new test called Duolingo. I'm sure this has also risen in popularity among the youngsters a lot. So Duolingo English test is accepted by almost 140 Canadian post-secondary institutions. It can be completed in just 1 hour, even better, right? And results are available in just 2 days, which is probably the quickest any uh, proficiency test gives their results. And the best thing is that the test is administered online. But let me just repeat it one more time that before registering for an English language test, make sure that the DLI that you are applying, that means the college or the university that you are applying to in Canada, accepts this test. In addition, make sure to confirm that the DLI will accept online tests, uh, that are currently being offered due to COVID-19. It might be a very temporary thing. There might be a college or a university which is accepting Duolingo online test today because the situation isn't back to normal yet. But maybe, say, 3 months down the line, when things hopefully have become better, they might discontinue. So you have to be very diligent in your research before you take any of these steps. So the last test that I would want to bring to your notice is scale. I think this is pretty much an unheard test in India yet, but this test is called the Canadian Academic English Language. So CALE test is operated by Paragon Testing Enterprise, and it is accepted by over 180 universities and colleges across Canada, including all English-speaking universities and 82% of English-speaking colleges. So CALE is already available in India, by the way. And apart from India, Philippines, I think the UAE, and of course in Canada as well. So at present in India, they are offering tests only in Chandigarh. But according to their expansion plan, a lot of locations should open up in different parts of the country, in different parts of India by next year. So CALE is getting a lot of popularity within Canada at present, and we are witnessing a trend that students here are preferring attempting CALE instead of IELTS, for which I think one of the biggest reasons is that this is 100% Canadian test and planned and designed to suit the local needs and sensibilities. So I guess that's why people feel more confident about it, because if they've already lived in Canada for, say, even a few months, they feel more confident about a test which is based in questions or situations which are very Canadian. All right, let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now let's talk about the requirement of English test for Canadian permanent residents. So I would be talking about the two most, and actually the only two accepted tests by Canadian immigration, namely IELTS and CELPIP. So IELTS, as most of you are aware, it's the International English Language Testing System. It measures the language proficiency of people who want to migrate or work where English is used as a language of communication. So IELTS is developed to provide a fair and accurate assessment of English language proficiency as it assesses the abilities in listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and is designed to reflect, how you will use English at work, in social context, or even at leisure. When you're just having fun, your friends, family, or community that you're living in, especially in their new life abroad. So this is designed to help you work, migrate, and fit into a country where the native language is English. And it's not just Canada, but countries like Australia, New Zealand, UK, and USA. So your ability to listen, read, write, and speak in English will be assessed during the test and on a grade of, graded on the scale of 1 to 9. So you must have heard, many of you who've started looking at English proficiency tests, that we're always talking about bands when we talk about IELTS. So the bands start from 1 to 9, depending on how proficient you are in a language. So, for IELTS, test languages developed by language specialists from all over, all the native speakers, so people who live in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, US, they all set the papers. They make questions, they develop your language proficiency tests for IELTS. And that is the reason that it is accepted also in all those countries. And IELTS is most widely accepted English language proficiency due to its high quality control, and it's recognized in over 10,000 organizations worldwide. So including IELTS, including all IELTS can be accepted in schools, colleges, universities, immigration authorities, professional bodies. IELTS is accepted in all these organizations and in most of the countries. So IELTS can be given in two ways according to your preference. You can either take computer delivered or a paper based test. So IELTS offers a computer delivered test for listening, reading, and writing, which means that the test takers sit in front of a computer during reading, listening, and writing tests with questions presented on the screen, but in an official IELTS test center. And they submit their answers on the computer itself. But the speaking test is still carried out face to face, and a trained IELTS trainer takes that. Whereas a paper based test, as the name pretty much says, you have to sit down on like a typical desk and chair, and they'll give you a booklet in which you mark your answers and write your writing component. And in the paper based as well, the speaking test is still carried out face to face with an IELTS trainer, examiner. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now let's look at the format in this slide for both IELTS General and Academic. So I would again like to repeat here that IELTS Academic is a test which is suitable for those who are wanting to study in an English speaking environment or university for higher education. And IELTS General training is required for migration to countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and UK. So both the tests have 4 modules. As you can see, listening, reading, writing. And all these 3 models, the first 3, are done in the same order. First you'll have listening, then you'll have reading, and then you'll have writing. And they all are done in one sitting. And speaking either takes place a day earlier or a day later. So you have to book 2 different days, since the speaking will happen on a different sitting. And listening and speaking modules are the same for both academic and general IELTS. whereas the reading and writing modules are a little different. And different only in terms of the content. Let's start with the listening module first. The listening module has 4 sections consisting of 4 audio recordings and 40 questions which need to be attempted in about 30 minutes. So the test takers will listen to 4 recordings of native English speakers and then write their answers to those series of questions that will come up in your booklet if it's a paper based. So in this recording, 1 is a conversation between 2 people. Recording 2 is a monologue. That means only one person is speaking. And both these sections are set in everyday social context. For example, a speech about a school, or 2 people talking about a local park and the facilities that are given to the community. So the third recording is a conversation among maximum of 4 people. It can be lesser, but it will not go beyond 4. And it is set in an everyday social, uh, educational, or training context. So this is what makes it different from the first 2 recordings. The last 2 recordings, which is third and fourth, they're more on the educational or training context. So for example, say a university tutor and a teacher and a student are discussing an assignment. That's what the recording would be about. And the last recording is again a monologue. That means only one person is speaking, but that person would be speaking on some academic subject. So it can be a lecture which uh, is being presented in a class in a university on maybe a scientific subject or a mathematical subject, or geographical subject, any different subject, but it would be in a educational setting. And you'll hear the recordings just once. So one has to really enhance the listening skills beforehand. So various abilities can be assessed, through these 4 set of uh, sections and 4 audios. Assessors will be looking at for evidence of your ability to understand the main ideas, detailed factual information, if you're able to extract those things from the recordings. uh, are you able to extract the opinions and the attitudes of the speakers? Are you able to understand the purpose of the utterance, as in whatever is being spoken in the audio, and evidence of your ability to follow the development of the ideas? So all this will be assessed if you're able to get the correct answers from listening to an audio once and getting the right answers. Okay, let's move on to the reading module. So both the academic and general tests have 3 sections with text consisting about, again, around 40 questions, which need to be attempted in about 60 minutes. So you have around 1 hour for that. So these 40 questions are designed to test a wide range of reading skills. Among the 40 questions, a variety of question types are used, like multiple choice, identifying information, identifying writer's view, matching headings, sentence completion or summary completion, diagram completion sometimes, or recognizing writer's opinion, or attitudes and purposes as well. The only difference, I would say, between academic and general reading module is the source of these questions. So academic reading includes 3 long texts, which range from the descriptive and factual, I would say, to the discursive and very analytical. So they are taken from books and journals, magazines, newspapers. But the topics from these sources are selected very carefully. Though they are non specialist in their audience selection as well, but they are appropriate for people who are entering university courses or seeking any professional registration. So they'll be slightly more theoretical in their approach than whereas the general training test would include extracts from probably, again, books, magazines, notices, advertisements, or any handbooks. And the material that you get in IELTS general reading, you're likely to encounter on a daily basis in an English speaking environment. So I would say this is more practical uh, test when it comes to general training IELTS reading module, but whereas academic training is a little more theoretical. So, okay, let's move to the writing module. Writing module, as you can see on the slide, has two sections. So these two tasks, which need to be finished again in about 1 hour, 60 minutes, you would be given for both. So task one is supposed to be around 150 words, and task two around 250 words. So the marking is also done in the similar way. So, the task one is a smaller, shorter task. So this is given less weightage, whereas task two is given more weightage when they're calculating your bands for IELTS. But the topics are pretty much, of general interest. So like in task one for academic test, the test takers are presented with a graph, or a table or a pie chart, those kinds of things. And the test takers are expected to describe or summarize, or in other words, explain the information in their own words. So you have to uh, describe a diagram into your English words. And you may be asked to describe or explain data basically. Right? While in task one of general IELTS, the test takers are presented with a situation and asked to write a letter. So a letter of, an email or a letter requesting information or complaining or explaining the situation. So this is a fairly easy task, I would say. But yes, what you have to understand is that the style of the letter may be personal, semi-formal, or formal. It can be any of those. And task two is essay writing for both academic and general. The test takers are expected to write an essay in response to, point of view, an argument, or even a problem. So you have to kind of, look at the problem, analyze it, and then provide a solution. Now, the difference between, since both IELTS academic and general have the same kind of question, it has an essay writing, but I would say the difference between both would be the treatment of the topic given. So, how you need to treat the essay. So, in an academic test, the writing style needs to be fairly formal, I would say. And contrastingly, in the general test, writing can be very personal in style. So, that's practically, I would say, in the simplest words, that's the difference between both the tests. All right, let's talk about the speaking module. That has three parts. And like I shared before, that speaking test is the same for both academic IELTS and general IELTS. All right, so we were talking about the speaking module, which is the last module for IELTS. And I was saying that speaking module is the same for both IELTS general as well as IELTS academic. And it's a short module for just about 11 to 14 minutes. Of course, the rest depends on the examiner who's taking that test. And the speaking section assesses your use of spoken English pretty much. And the test is recorded so it can be evaluated later. So it's a very well thought of process. It's not that, somebody's just talking to you and they're just making up their mind what they want to give you and how much score they're giving. It's very proper, due diligently checked. It's evaluated, not just by one, but sometimes if required, it can be checked by more than one, evaluated by more than one person as well. So let's quickly go through all the three parts. In the first part, the examiner will ask you general questions about yourself. A range of very familiar topics such as your home, family, what kind of work you do, or what kind of work would you like to do, what do you study, what are your interests. But they're very organized, logically organized questions that will be put to you, and mostly it's one theme. So for example, you might get a theme for pets. They would ask you a question about pets, and they say that, okay, what's your favorite pet? And if you're like me and you say that I've never liked a pet all my life, so you can't just um, stop your entire part one saying that I don't like pets. So this is where not just your speaking skill, but also your presence of mind is going to work. So now you'll handle it in a way, you'll say that, honestly, I've never been a pet lover, but if I actually think of it and I am given a choice what pet I would like to take home, this would be the one. So you have to be quick witted as well as uh, there has to be a strong command on the language. So I would say, this part lasts for about 4 to 5 minutes if the conversation's going pretty well. And it focuses on the ability to communicate opinions, information on everyday topics and very common experiences or situations by answering a range of questions that will be asked. Okay, let's talk about part two. So, part two, you'll be given a card which asks you to talk about a particular topic. So, you'll have 1 minute to prepare, and you'll have to speak for about 2 minutes. So the examiner will then ask you one or two questions based on the same topic, pretty much based on what you have spoken about that topic as well. So this part, I would say, focuses on the ability to speak at length, because otherwise, if we say we are talking to someone for 2 minutes, it's not a big deal. I mean, if you're calling a friend, um, 20 minutes would also not feel like much. But if you have to, you know, time yourself, you take up a topic. For example, you take up probably the most abused topic today, and that would be COVID-19. And if you're about to speak for 2 minutes, you'll actually be a little hesitant because, when you start speaking, it does take a lot of effort and preparation to get to a point where you can speak for this length without much preparation, probably just a minute, and that minute flies off. Anyway, so uh, the topics I would say are pretty general. They're like common experiences or situations by answering, and then you answer those questions that are asked. And you need to learn to use the appropriate language and organize ideas, particularly in the second part. So in the third part, you will be further asked questions about the topic which you spoke in part two. And they'll give you the opportunity to discuss more abstract ideas and issues. So this part, the test lasts for about 4 to 5 minutes. And this part focuses on the ability to express and justify opinions and analyze, discussion, and then speculate about certain issues. Okay, so let's talk about the next English test that I wanted to discuss, which is gaining quite a popularity in Canada. And actually, I'm seeing that trend in India too now. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so this test is called CELPIP, and it stands for Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program. I know it's a long name. That's okay. We all just refer to it as, and it's commonly known as CELPIP. Just like IELTS, nobody remembers what the full form is. So this is called CELPIP. So this is a general English language proficiency test. So this test very clearly, accurately, and precisely assesses a test taker's English abilities in a variety of, you have to understand this part, that it's an everyday situation, such as communicating with coworkers or your superiors in a workplace, interacting with your friends, understanding news casts, interpreting and responding to written material. So, since first being offered to Canadian immigration applicants in 2012, that's when this test was introduced and it was accepted for Canadian immigration purposes. The test has been offered as an alternative means for applicants to prove their English ability, because before that, IELTS General was the only test accepted by Canadian immigration. So this came as a respite for a lot of applicants who saw, this as an alternate. So CELPIP is administered again by Paragon Testing, and this is a subsidiary of University of British Columbia, famously known as UBC. So UBC is involved in making and developing this test. And this test is officially accepted by several governments, professional organizations, colleges, universities, and employers as well. So, in this also, there are two types of tests which are offered by Paragon Testing: CELPIP General, which evaluates test takers' English listening, reading, writing, and speaking, all four skills, and is officially designated for permanent resident applications by IRCC, that's the Immigration Department, and is also accepted by professional delegations. Like we spoke earlier about immigration consultant when you have to get a license, or a real estate license. So all these are accepted. They accept CELPIP test as well. And the other one that you can see on the slide is LS. So LS very simply just means a short form of listening and speaking. And this evaluates test takers' listening and speaking skills, and is officially designated for citizenship applications. So people who have never given a test, English test in their life, and never studied in English in Canada or before that. So if they have to apply for citizenship in Canada, then they can give CELPIP LS. That means the only requirement for citizenship is listening and speaking skills. And they're expected to get a very low score, because most of them are people who are in their late 50s and stuff. So, they are not expected to go to English schools and start learning English from the beginning. But still, Canada expects that if you are entering into the country, you've been living here for so many years that you're becoming a citizen, you should at least be able to manage talking, at least in broken English, if not proper English. And that's when you become eligible for citizenship. So CELPIP is available in 6 other countries apart from Canada. Uh, of course, in India, China, Philippines, US, Singapore, and UAE. So in India, as you can see on the slide, there are about 10 test centers operating right now, covering all major parts of the country. And in the planning ahead for expansion, there are many more centers which are going to open up. Okay, now let's look at CELPIP format in detail. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, 4 modules: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And the listening test, as you can see on the slide, has 6 parts. The test time is about 47 to 55 minutes, and they're all multiple choice questions. So, this test will measure how well you understand English that is used in day-to-day situations. You'll have recordings, that one of these 6 recordings, if you can read the questions, the topics that they're going to be based on. It's listening for problem solving, daily life conversation, listening for information, or a news item, discussion, or viewpoints. Right? So these are things which we generally, even unaware, we do all of that. So, question would be as simple as the first recording would be: a person is gotten onto a bus and they want to go to a particular stop, but they've kind of lost their way. So they're speaking to the driver and figuring out which next bus number should they take to reach that particular destination. So that's kind of problem solving. Very, very simple situations, where everyday situations where people express opinions, their preferences, they give viewpoints. So in this test, you'll see that there are 6 audio, and there are there are 38 questions that are based on those 6 audio clippings. So in all the 6 different sections, various skills need to be sharpened to actually do well, like establishing what's the context of the discussion, or using note taking strategies. When you're listening to those audio recordings, some students of mine like to take notes, because they cannot absorb so much information at one time. So then you have to learn using abbreviations or a way to record facts. How do you write them quickly, because the recording is going on and on? Or learning to filter relevant versus irrelevant information. Now if the clipping is, let's say, about 1.5 minutes, everything that's said in that 1.5 minutes cannot be important. So you have to train yourself to filter the information, that which are the ones which I need to remember or take down as my notes, and what I can ignore. So understanding visual clues is also important, because if you see part 5, which is listening to a discussion, that's actually a video clipping. So there are about 3 people in all these video clippings who sit and talk about, they discuss, the discussion might be about basic things of like a work scenario. There are 3 colleagues sitting in an office cafeteria, and they're talking about planning their, uh, say, anniversary party for the company. So little things, you know, nothing very technical. But again, visual clues in a video would also be important. For example, in section 6, if you see, you have to practice strategies like recognizing facts and opinions, differentiating between summaries and paraphrases, identifying the pros and cons. Since this is a section when you would hear viewpoints of one or more experts about a certain topic. So every different part would actually be requiring different set of skills. Okay, let's now look at the reading module and move to the next slide. Thank you. So reading test measures how well you can understand what you read in your personal, social, or workplace context. So in this test, the test takers read about 4 passages and answer 38 questions based on them. So you will learn to train yourself in skimming and scanning, identifying synonyms, getting meaning from the context. Obviously, the answers are not going to be written right there in the passages. So, extracting those, eliminating wrong answers, that's a great strategy. Improving your reading speed, because these are all time-based. Then understanding and applying logic, I would say, very important. Locating specific information. One is an overall view, then some questions are based on some specific information that is being conveyed through the text, or identifying the main idea of the paragraph, identifying different viewpoints, or recognizing fact or opinion. These are among the major skills that you would need to score very well in the CELPIP reading module. And as you can see on the slide, this is again about 55 to 60 minutes, like close to an hour, all multiple choice questions, and there'll be 4 sections, which you can see right there on the screen. So let's move to the next slide, to the writing module. Thank you. So all writing tasks are assessed on the quality of your content, kind of vocabulary, readability, and task fulfillment. These are the 4 basic parameters where CELPIP grades you on your writing skills. So the writing test consists of 2 tasks. And they're designed to measure how well you can communicate through writing in everyday situations. So in this task, the test takers respond to both questions with written answers and topics of general interest, and you're only required to write 150 to 200 words maximum for both the tasks. So the first task is writing emails, and the topics are usually based on personal, social, or workplace situations. Again, very, very simple situations, like you're moving houses. Uh, Write an email to your friend and tell her why you're moving, describe your new house, and invite her. That's how basic, because they want you actually to get versant or proficient in writing, reading, speaking, and understanding, listening to very simple situations that you come across every day when you're living in an English speaking country. So the second task might sound very complicated, like responding to a survey question, but it's super simple. So the task is about expressing your opinion about a given topic. So in simpler words, if how I explain it to my students is that, like how I think debate is a very, very famous, popular activity in India. So how in debate you get one topic and then either you go in favor or you go against. So this question is pretty much like that. So, the test taker is given two different opinions about a topic. You have to choose one of those opinions, and then you have to give the reasons for that choice. And it's just put as a survey question, because survey will give you two options, which you can take a side and then support and justify your choice. But more importantly, writing test assesses various skills, like logical organization, convincing support and development of your ideas, precise vocabulary, accurate grammar, and clear formatting, then suitable tone and careful proofreading. I think, in spite of the questions being very simple, these are the skills that an evaluator will look into when they are evaluating your answer paper. Okay, let's move to the speaking module. Next slide, please. Thank you. So all speaking tasks are assessed on content, vocabulary, listenability, and task fulfillment. So these are the four parameters for evaluation. The speaking test is designed to measure your functional speaking proficiency in English, not theoretical, not academic, but very, very basic skills that you would require to talk to people, required to participate in a variety of social and workplace situations, basically. So this test assesses how well you are able to do it. Test takers reply to an on-screen prompt verbally. So you will get a question on the screen and you have to speak into the computer, which I think all of us have become very good at, thanks to a lot of online teaching and studying, um, attending a lot of courses, attending a lot of webinars that we've all been doing, and we kind of getting used to talking to our computer screens. Otherwise, initially people used to find it a little odd, as like talking to the computer, but now it's become uh, quite comfortable. So there are 8 tasks in the speaking component, which range from very natural and informal conversations with family, friends, and strangers to formal ones with your employers and colleagues. It's a very interesting set of questions, that you would be expected to answer. If you can look at some of the tasks right on your screen. So task 1 is, for example, giving advice. So, giving advice would come up with very basic situations, like your friend is organizing a party. Please advise her what she should do before, during, and after that party. Right? So, that kind of simple situations. So, I would say it's a really interesting speaking exam. Okay, so speaking test assesses various skills, how you organize your ideas and develop them. What is the range of your vocabulary? Are you repeatedly using the same set of words, or are you able to use a very wide range of vocabulary? And if you can use it very naturally. Now, this is what CELPIP requires. They want you to talk naturally, like you would really talk to um, a real friend or your boss, not an affected or an artificial tone. And how easy it is to listen to you and understand your response. And I think also very importantly, that how well did you follow the instructions? So if you read the question, did you follow the instructions properly, and did you use the appropriate tone or not? So these are the few skills that you will be evaluated on. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So since now we've looked at the format of both CELPIP and IELTS, I would like to share that people are divided and sometimes confused when they have to choose between CELPIP and IELTS. And to make that choice easier so that you can make an informed decision when the time comes, let's look at the comparison of both these tests. So if you're looking for permanent residency, both tests are accepted and approved for Canadian immigration process by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, that's IRCC. Then both these tests, IELTS and CELPIP, are designed to measure the English language proficiency of test takers. And all the four categories, like we've talked, listening, reading, writing, speaking, all the main aspects of any language, they are evaluated in both the tests. Both the tests, again, accept American as well as British English spellings and grammar. Though CELPIP is not really a British test, whereas IELTS is considered a British test majorly, but still CELPIP uh, accepts if you use British spellings or you use American spellings as well. I would say the duration of both the tests is also pretty much same at about 3 hours for both for all four modules. Uh, Looking at their similarities, in spite of all these similarities, there are many differences which these tests have. So let's quickly look at the differences that CELPIP and IELTS have. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So I would say one crucial difference between the two exams is that CELPIP is entirely computer based. So all components of the test are delivered by computer. Uh, in IELTS, by contrast, the reading, writing, and listening sections are paper based and speaking is done in person. Even if IELTS is computer delivered and all the three modules of listening, reading, and writing are done on computer, speaking component will still be done in person. But as far as CELPIP is concerned, the entire four modules is all computer delivered. And CELPIP test uses Canadian speakers. One major difference I would say is that when you're hearing the audios for listening, all those speakers are Canadian. So they only use Canadian accent. While IELTS tests includes native speakers from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, US. And in their listening section, you'll hear all or at least some of these accents. So I would say some non-native speakers, like us, we might find CELPIP listening section more understandable and IELTS a little more challenging if, in case you happen to be tested on a particular audio which has, say, Australian accent, for example. I mean, personally speaking, I cannot take Australian accent. I think it's very heavy, and we all need that special skills to be very comfortable with understanding Australian accent because it's a very heavy accent. So, I would say the reason is because all of us are very used to the North American accent. So, when I say North American, that would include American and Canadian English. I think I would understand this as two major reasons. So, one is to the exposure Hollywood has given us, because we've all grown up and you're still, we all are still watching Hollywood, American movies and series, right? And another, for India, I think another big reason is also the tremendous US corporate presence in India. So, all these offices, all these companies which have come and opened up in different parts of India, people who are working in those companies, they are all very comfortable with the North American accent. Anyway, moving on, IELTS speaking section includes a live conversation with an examiner, as we just spoke about IELTS. While during CELPIP, you record your voice on the computer. So some test takers prefer talking to an examiner, while the others feel more comfortable with face-to-face interaction, because I've heard some of people saying that they want to see those gestures, or if the examiner is accepting and liking what they're saying, they kind of boost it kind of boosts their confidence, and they can speak better going forward. So it's really very, very personal. Yeah. So furthermore, I would say CELPIP results are generated online, and then you can receive your scorecard in your CELPIP account in just 4 to 5 days maximum. Whereas the IELTS result is usually declared on the 13th day. And after that, the TRF, that's the test report form, is sent out. Another difference is the cost. I wouldn't say it's a big difference, but when we talk about facts, this does make a difference. So CELPIP costs about 11,000 in India, 11,000 rupees, whereas IELTS costs about 13,000 rupees in India. So while both tests are designed to test your language proficiency, CELPIP lays a slightly stronger emphasis on functional language than IELTS. So many CELPIP test takers require candidates to understand and react to a range of everyday situations. If you would, I had repeatedly said this while I was talking about CELPIP, that it's based on everyday situations. May that be social, may that be family or friends, or workplace situations, but they're like every day. It's not like um, something about a nuclear war. Basic things like there was a storm today. There are people talking about that, short discussion. So an everyday situation. So those are the kind of situations when you move to a different country, you'll actually face situations like this. So this is, I would say, now this is true in some parts of IELTS too, but not as much as it is in CELPIP. CELPIP requires a major focus on functional English. So people are expected to solve several practical problems that they might come across during their stay in say, Canada. IELTS is more focused on theoretical aspects or theoretical English. So you'll be tested on grammar and application more rather than neutral reactions in IELTS. Okay, moving forward. Let's talk about the complexity. Okay, so as for the complexity levels of both tests, please note before I say anything, uh, this is very subjective to my personal opinion, and only derived by my experience of training students for both IELTS and CELPIPs over time. So IELTS and CELPIP exams are challenging. There's no two-way to that. And they both require proper study prep, dedication, mental stamina, realistical study plan, I would say, according to your proficiency level and what your objective is. How much do you want to score? Your preparation will depend pretty much on that too. Saying that one test is easier than the other isn't really, possible, since your English proficiency level will be assessed the same way by an examiner. But you might find one format easier than the other, or one set of questions easier than the other, or you feel more comfortable with one kind of questions those are asked in one test over the other. So while I would say IELTS may be harder in some respects, CELPIP comes with its own challenges too. But I've personally witnessed more than a few success stories of test takers who have managed to attain their required score in CELPIP in spite of multiple unsuccessful IELTS attempts. But again, I would say this is a very personal view that I have. Okay, talking about the scoring, scoring for IELTS and CELPIP is again different. For CELPIP, there's a score of 1 to 12 for each section, which is the line, which is in line with Canadian language benchmark. For the IELTS test, the score for each section is from 1 to 9. So IELTS bands have to be calculated to align to the CLB. I'm going to be talking about CLB a little more in the next slide. Just remember for now that CLB is Canadian language benchmarks. And CELPIP is directly aligned with CLB. So if you say you scored 9 in CELPIP, that means you scored 9 CLB. But that's not true for IELTS. IELTS need to be calculated and brought to the equivalency of the CLB. Now we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is how you will see when you look at even the IRCC website, that's the immigration website in Canada. This is how they give you the table where you can calculate your score, whichever test out of 2 you would have attempted. So if you at any stage you're interested in moving to Canada, you'll have to familiarize yourself to Canadian language benchmark, that is CLB. And it's a national standard for in Canada for describing, measuring, and recognizing the English language proficiency of adult immigrants and prospective immigrants for living or working in Canada. So the Canadian language benchmarks describe 12 levels of ability in which in each of 4 different language skills. So all 4, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, there are 12 levels. So the least being 1 and 12 being the best, most proficient. So the CLB is used in India to in Canada to describe the language ability of people who are learning English. So that's there's separate benchmarks that you receive for 3 stages. So CLB has 3 different stages. Stage 1 covers benchmarks 1 to 4, which is known as basic language ability. Stage 2 is intermediate language, which covers benchmarks of 5 to 8. And then the third stage is the advanced language ability, and that covers the benchmarks from 9 to 12. So if you see the picture, you can see that CELPIP score is already equivalent to this to CLB, with which Canadian immigration requires. Whereas in IELTS, for example, if you need a CLB 9, you have to become eligible for, say, an immigration program. You would have to look at the equivalency table, something like this, which you'll be able to look at the immigration site to determine what bands you require in IELTS. So like in this table, if somebody needs a CLB 9, you have to get 8777. So generally called as 8777 in IELTS. That will make up CLB 9. Okay. I really hope I was able to clarify the grading system for this, because if you look at the website, everywhere in any program that you see, even for students, you will see that they will talk about the CLB that you require. Not difficult, you just look at the table and then you find out how many bands. In case you're giving IELTS, just look at how many bands you're required for a particular program. All right, so since CELPIP is a newer test, I would like to highlight a few features of those tests before I finish my presentation today. If you can please go to the next slide. Thank you. So CELPIP is a very Canadian test, like I said, and it is designed specifically to meet the language skills for the Canadian permanent residency and citizenship. So if one is aiming at moving to Canada particularly, or is already in Canada and trying to get a PR, this is the right exam for them. Of course, apart from IELTS general training. So CELPIP exam, like I said, is completely computerized. I think this is important because the millennials, like all the youngsters, all of you, especially, are more comfortable working on electronic devices as compared to paper and pen. So since it's their comfort zone, therefore performance gets enhanced as well, I believe. So another feature is that the exam is taken in one day, in one location, and all four CELPIP test components can be finished and performed in one sitting. And there's no need to return, like you have to come back for another test. If speaking English face to face with someone causes a lot of stress and anxiety, then CELPIP would be a good choice because you will be speaking to a computer and not to another person. And as the coaching centers and immigration consultants are yet not very familiar with CELPIP as they are with IELTS, not many people are crowding the CELPIP test centers. So I would believe that getting a date for writing that test would be easier as compared to many other places. And you can get a test date availability even in the near future. So another important aspect which my students really like is that there's a spell check option. So if you're typing your answer for the writing module and you type wrong spellings and you're not sure about the spellings, just like a Word document, that word is going to be highlighted in red, right? The underlining would be in red, and then it'll give you options, and then you can correct those spellings. And again, both American and British spellings are accepted. I've already spoken about the results. Usually, the fourth day from the day that you appear for the exam, you receive your results uh, in your CELPIP account, where you've made your account to book the test. You will get your score card that, and then you can download it and use it for various purposes. Okay. Uh, so both the tests are equally appropriate to be used for immigration. That's IELTS and CELPIP. And choosing one over the other is really a matter of personal preference. IELTS is a good choice for test takers who prefer paper-based exams and separate face-to-face, human interaction for speaking component. However, based on the analysis above, CELPIP is a better choice for those who prefer a computer-based exam and are looking for a faster and a less stressful test experience. So whichever test you choose, consider your options for communication skills training and be sure that you start your exam preparation well in advance. Since all these years, the only choice students in India, I would also want to speak about the academic test. Students in India have always had IELTS academic option. Students who want to study abroad, and it was very challenging. But now you can explore other options, which we talked about earlier in the presentation, like CALE. And similarly, those looking to migrate to Canada can explore CELPIP and IELTS General to make an informed decision. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. It was my pleasure to share my thoughts on this platform in the presence of some very senior colleagues. And I look forward to be in touch with some of you in the near future too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As it is said that learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. You have acquainted us all thoroughly by giving interesting examples with what is language proficiency, what is its relevance, how it is required in Canadian context, different types of proficiency tests, provided a clear overview of IELTS and CELPIP tests, and even familiarized us with the similarities and the differences between the two. Thanks a lot, ma'am. However, you have made everything clear in your lecture. There are some questions that we have received mostly from the students, and if you permit us, I would like to ask one by one.
Absolutely, please go ahead.
Okay, ma'am, the first question is from a student from Anandpur Sahib College. He has asked, what is the difference between an achievement test and a proficiency test?
Okay, I think we did talk about it, but maybe it wasn't very clear then. Um, so, I would like to put it through an example, which I already used. I think that would be the best way of understanding it. So, a proficiency test actually is about how good you are at using your skills that you have already acquired. For example, all that you are learning now in colleges, say for example English, that you're learning now, that is what you are giving an achievement test for you're writing a test at the end of your semester, right? You're getting grades from your teachers. They are testing you for what they have taught you. So for example, in your school you gave a test which had grammar questions, right? So this is how you learned a language. But in proficiency test is the practical use of what you learned in your school. So the grammar you've learned, and the question was, what is a noun or what is an adjective? When you answered those questions, that was an achievement test that you gave, right? But now when you're giving the proficiency test, they are not going to ask you what a noun or an adjective is, but they want you to use the nouns and the adjectives in the right place at the right time. So you're acquiring the knowledge, but then you are using it in a practical format for your proficiency evaluation. I really hope I'm clearer.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so
to him
much.
or her.
Next question is from a student of Jijin Public School. He is asking which proficiency test can be more beneficial to them.
Like I said almost at the end of my presentation, that it's a very personal view. So if you're a student who's going to look for taking admission in a college or a university going forward in Canada, then you need to look at what test is accepted by the particular college or university that you're applying. So if you're going to, say, another country, if you're interested in going to Australia, then you need to look at their immigration policies and the tests that they accept at that particular time, and which university or college that you want to apply. So it'll be a very subjective decision, but please be very aware. I can only talk strongly about Canada, and specifically the tests that I wanted to introduce today are very Canadian tests. Like I talked about CALE for students, which is an academic test, which is in comparison with IELTS academic. And the second test I talked about is CELPIP, which is for immigration purposes, which is equivalent to IELTS general training. So when we talk about CALE or CELPIP, they both are only Canadian tests. So if you're very sure that you're moving to Canada, then you should be exploring Canadian tests. Otherwise, you should go for other academic tests like TOEFL or IELTS academic.
Okay. So ma'am, next question is from a student of Government College Faridkot. He's asking, could you please elaborate on some other benefits of language acquisition?
I thought I really elaborated a lot, and the presentation was pretty long in itself. I think if you go to the beginning of the presentation, there are no limits when you acquire a language, and more proficient that you become over time, more doors are going to open, starting from getting admission in a great college or a great university just because you have good proficiency, English proficiency skills. Because if you do not perform well on those proficiency tests, then your choices of colleges are going to be limited. If you're getting a, say, CLB 5, then you're not going to be accepted in many colleges or universities in Canada. But if you're scoring a CLB score 7 or above, more opportunities open up. Similarly, after studies, more opportunities open up when you look at career options. career options, for better jobs, then going up corporate ladder, moving up in better jobs, better organizations. Everything depends on language skills. Of course, I'm not undermining technical skills, but I assume that you've already gained the technical skills, and that's why we are working on the language acquisition then.
Thank you, ma'am. And the last question is, how much time and efforts are required in learning a new language?
I think the key word would be that there has to be a beginning. It will depend on how focused you are, how much time can you spend, and are you working towards learning a new language in the right way or haphazard. If you join courses and you make sure that you're doing it from the right place where they're not wasting your time, then it can be lesser amount of time. But obviously, if you're not giving it as much focus, you're not spending time, you're not focused on it, or you're not really practicing it, because I would say learning a language is not just about taking classes, probably doing a writing test, probably writing a little sentence, poem once in a while. That's not what language is. Language is about using it. Like I shared that why students from Punjab are not able to do all of that when they come to Canada is because they've all learned English in their schools. And their theoretical knowledge is stronger than the native students. Like my sons who go to school here, they are not taught what grammar is. And when I talk sometimes to students, my Indian students can understand when I talk about particular aspects of grammar. Natives cannot. But then it's about using that skill. That's what they do not do. And so it just becomes a bookish knowledge. So it's about acquiring the language and then practicing it on an everyday basis. Find friends, make friends who speak in that language. Practice it every day. Use online apps to do that. And if you show that dedication, you can really do well in a few months too.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure the students must have got their answers as you have taken all the queries minutely and did full justice. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Sushminderjit Kaur, Head Department of English, to propose the vote of thanks. Ma'am, I hope I am audible to you.
Yes, actually, I told Ma'am Jasleen to please make me co-host so that I can say a few words of thanks to Ma'am Jasleen.
Yes, ma'am. You are audible. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Postgraduate Department of English and Department of Communicative English, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ma'am Jasleen Bindra, who accepted our humble invitation and spared her precious time for us. The information which she shared is going to be useful, definitely. I just want to reach out and say a big thank you for her discourse, which will be extremely beneficial and enlightening, especially for the students who wish to immigrate. Thank you very much, Jasleen. I'm thankful to Dr. S.P. Singh, President, Gujranwala Khalsa Educational Council, for always stimulating us. I am obliged to Principal Dr. Vinder Singh Ji for his unflinching support, motivation, and guidance. I am also grateful to all my colleagues, friends, and dear students for listening patiently. Thank you for your interest in your experience by participating in our webinar. Last but not least, I thank wholeheartedly the technical team for their assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, and thanks a lot to each and every one of you. Satprakash sir, please close the meeting.